Saturday, the 25th of February, 1995. A luxury hotel suite in Borneo. A young Englishman wakes on his 28th birthday, pulls the morning newspaper from under the door and reads the front page. British bank collapses. For one strange second, he feels almost sorry for whoever did it. Then he understands. The bank is Barings. It is 233 years old. It financed the wars against Napoleon. It banked the British crown. And he, a plasterer's son from Watford who failed his school maths exam, has just destroyed it from a back office on the other side of the world. £827 million. Gone. To understand how one trader emptied a bank older than the United States, you have to go back 3 years, and you have to understand 3 small words he could never bring himself to say. Nick Leeson became the original rogue trader, not a criminal mastermind, not a genius. A frightened young man who lost £20,000, could not admit it, and spent the next 3 years digging. By the end, the hole was bigger than the bank itself, and the most disturbing part is not what he did. It is that for 3 years nobody stopped him, because while the lie kept growing, it was making everyone around him rich. This is how the oldest name in the City of London died for the price of a £1 coin. Begin with the bank, because the bank is half the story. Barings was founded in 1762. It helped finance Britain's war against Napoleon. It helped fund the Louisiana Purchase. It was banker to the crown, so woven into the establishment that a French minister once said there were 6 great powers in Europe: Britain, France, Austria, Russia, Prussia, and the Baring brothers. By the 1990s, it was Britain's oldest merchant bank, a place of wood paneling and inherited certainty, run by men whose families had run it for generations. Nick Leeson did not come from that world. He grew up on a council estate in Watford, the son of a plasterer and a nurse. He failed his final maths exam, the one qualification a future derivatives trader might be expected to pass. He started in the back office, settling other people's trades, watching the public school boys get the glory. He was desperate to be one of them. So when Barings offered him a chance to go to Singapore in 1992 and run their new futures business, he took it. He was 25 years old. And in a decision that should have been impossible, the bank put him in charge of both sides of the operation. He ran the trading floor, the front office, where the bets are placed, and he ran the settlements desk, the back office, where every bet is checked, recorded, and confirmed. He was the player, and he was the referee. There was no one above him in Singapore who understood what he actually did. Imagine a casino where one man places the bets, works the cashier's window, and audits the books alone at night. That was Singapore. On the floor, he was loud and brash. A barrow boy among gentlemen. The kind of winner the old bank had never produced and could not bring itself to question. For a while, the house seemed to be winning. On the 3rd of July, 1992, Leeson opened an account on the bank's system. He numbered it 88888, 5 8s, because 8 is a lucky number in Chinese culture. On paper, it was an error account, a kind of digital wastepaper basket where small clerical mistakes are parked until they can be tidied up. That is all it was meant to be. 2 weeks later, a junior member of his team made a genuine mistake on the trading floor, buying when she should have sold. It cost £20,000. Leeson could have reported it. Instead, frightened of his temper of a boss and terrified of looking like he could not control his own team, he hid the loss inside account 88888. He told himself he would win it back in a few quick trades. He never said the three words that would have ended it there. I lost money. He did not win it back. He doubled. When a bet went wrong, he placed a bigger one to recover, then a bigger one again. A gambler's logic that professionals call the doubling strategy, the fastest way ever invented to turn a small loss into a catastrophe. By the end of 1992, the hidden hole was £2 million. A year later, it was 23 million. And still, he said nothing. To stay invisible, he became inventive. At the close of trading, he booked false deals between accounts, cross-trades that pushed his real losses into 88888 while crediting fat, fake profits to the bank's official books. He even had the back-office software adjusted so the secret account simply vanished from the reports that went to London. To his bosses, Nick Leeson looked like a phenomenon, a young man printing risk-free money out of Singapore. In 1994, he reported profits of £28.5 million. That single number was around 3/4 of the entire Barings Group's profit for the year. London was delighted. His product manager, Ron Baker, who by his own admission barely understood the derivatives Leeson was supposedly trading, exclaimed, "That guy is a Turbo Arbitrageur." When anyone asked how the profits were really made, Leeson sent memos so thick with jargon that one manager later called them pure gobbledygook, and nobody wanted to admit they could not follow it. The chairman, Peter Barings, told the Bank of England it was not actually terribly difficult to make money in the securities markets. They were celebrating a profit that did not exist. Behind the headline number, the real account was now hundreds of millions of pounds in the red. Here is the part that should keep regulators awake. It was not invisible. There were 4 separate alarms, and a human being chose to ignore each one. In the summer of 1994, Barings' own internal auditors flew to Singapore and wrote it down in black and white. Letting Leeson run the front and back office was an excessive concentration of power, an open door to fraud. They recommended stripping him of the back office role. The local manager, Simon Jones, fought the recommendation, and London never enforced it. Alarm 1, switched off by hand. The money itself screamed. To cover his secret losses, Leeson kept asking London for cash, claiming it was margin for client trades. London wired it, hundreds of millions of pounds, far more than the bank had ever collected from those so-called clients. The group treasurer, Tony Hawes, looked at Leeson's funding spreadsheets and called them, in effect, plain rubbish. He distrusted the numbers. He said it was too much of a coincidence, and then he sent the money anyway. Alarm 2, heard and overruled. The exchange noticed too. In January 1995, the Singapore Exchange wrote to Barings, worried about the bank's enormous positions and specifically naming account 88888. Simon Jones handed the warning letter to Leeson and let Leeson draft the reply. The man under suspicion was invited to answer the suspicions about himself. Alarm 3 handed to the suspect and then the auditors. When outside accountants found a £50 million hole in the books, Leeson invented a story, a giant trade with an American firm called Spear, Leeds, and Kellogg. To prove it, he forged a confirmation. He cut and pasted a letterhead, faked a signature, doctored a bank statement with scissors and tape, and faxed it over. The auditors accepted it without noticing that the top of the fax, the header printed by his own machine at home, read, "From Nick and Lisa." Alarm 4, signed by the fraudster, and waved through. Leeson's biggest bet was that Japan would stay calm. He had sold thousands of options that paid off only if the Tokyo market barely moved, the financial equivalent of selling earthquake insurance and praying the ground stays still. He was collecting small premiums and betting the world would be boring. At 5:46 in the morning on the 17th of January 1995, the ground in Japan did not stay still. A massive earthquake struck the city of Kobe. The Japanese stock market went into freefall, plunging more than 1,000 points. Every bet Leeson had placed went the wrong way at once. His earthquake insurance had been triggered by a literal earthquake. The losses, already enormous, began to double by the day, so he did the only thing he knew. He doubled again, buying frantically, betting billions that the market would bounce back, trying to trade his way out of a hole that was now beyond saving. It did not bounce. By late February, the secret account held losses of £827 million, more than twice the entire capital of the bank. There were still 3 words that could have stopped it. He still could not say them. On the 23rd of February, a settlements clerk sent from London, Tony Railton, cornered Leeson on the trading floor with a piece of paper and the simplest question in accounting. The numbers did not reconcile. As Railton put it, a plus B doesn't equal C. Explain why it doesn't equal C. Leeson said he would fetch the paperwork. Instead, he walked out of the building, sat down, and wrote a short message to the men who had called him a genius. It read, in full, "I'm sorry." Then he and his wife Lisa packed 2 small bags and ran. Back in London, the partners broke into his desk, found the 88888 account, and understood all at once that the bank was already dead. Over that final weekend, the Bank of England tried to organize a rescue. But no one could even calculate how much Leeson's open positions might still lose. The risk was bottomless. The governor of the Bank of England later insisted the bank's death was, in his words, not due to lack of support from the city. It was simply that no sane institution would buy a bomb that was still ticking. So Barings was sold. The Dutch bank ING took the whole 233-year-old institution, all its history and all its liabilities, for a token price of £1. Leeson, meanwhile, was running north through Malaysia in a hired white Mercedes, hotel to hotel, until that birthday morning in Borneo when the headline finally found him. His first thought, he later admitted, was almost funny. Somebody, somewhere, must be in even more trouble than he was. Then he flew toward Europe, and when his plane touched down at Frankfurt Airport, German police boarded it and arrested him on the tarmac, telling him at first that it was for traveling on false passports before the £1 billion charges caught up. Leeson fought extradition for 9 months in a German cell, then gave up and was flown back to Singapore. In December 1995, he pleaded guilty to fraud and forgery and was sentenced to 6.5 years in Changi prison. Inside, his wife divorced him, and he was diagnosed with colon cancer. He survived both and was released in 1999. He came home to a £100 million claim, hanging over everything he might ever earn. What happened next is almost the strangest part. He wrote a best-selling memoir, Rogue Trader, which became a film starring Ewan McGregor. He took a degree in psychology. He became an after-dinner speaker, lecturing banks on the dangers of men exactly like him. He served as chief executive of an Irish football club. And in the final irony, by 2023, Nick Leeson was working as a private investigator, hunting financial fraud for a living. The official inquiry into the collapse reached a verdict far more damning than any single villain. Barings, it found, fell because of a failure of management and other internal controls of the most basic kind. The lesson the entire industry took from it was almost embarrassingly simple, and it is now an iron law in every bank on earth. The person who places the bets can never again be the person who checks them, never the player and the referee. And yet the deeper lesson went unlearned. 13 years later, a trader at the French bank Société Générale lost nearly 5 billion euros the same way. 3 years after that, another at UBS lost more than 2 billion. The controls changed. The pride did not. But the deepest lesson is not about controls. It is about pride. A 233-year-old bank survived Napoleon, 2 world wars, and a dozen financial panics, and then died because the one number that was making everyone rich was a number nobody wanted to question. And it died because a frightened 25-year-old on a single afternoon in July could not bring himself to say 3 small words. I lost money. 3 words. £827 million. One bank, £1.